my place then. I've only just started. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addictive substance was alcohol. My behaviour could be equally addictive. So drinking, dependent for quite a long time, and then addicted. And the same with behaviour and work, relationships, materialism, collecting. I can still do all these things, but one day at a time. I don't drink on a daily basis. And I try not to obsess in terms of behaviour, so not to extremes of work relationships or collecting, although I'm very good at collecting things, and in amongst everything I've collected of late, I seem to have lost something, and it's been troubling me. And in our programme of recovery we say let it go, and then it'll come back to us. But the trouble is, if we're obsessed about finding something, we turf everything out. And you can't see it, but there's a table full of papers and things which I'm trying to sort through. Anyway, recovery, what's it all about? How to get sober and stay sober one day at a time. The reason why it's one day for me is I've learned that if I can live in the present moment, I have a better handle on what is possible and what is not possible, so what I can and cannot do, and learn the wisdom to know the difference. So although something's been rattling around in my head trying to find something, if I obsess about it, I exclude everything else, and I forget that there are more important things in life to do, like go out and see people, be a part of, and be in recovery. So what helps me in recovery these days? Well, family, friends, community kept me alive long enough. Family, friends and community are very much a part of my life, as is a fellowship, and that fellowship is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which helps me understand how to live sober one day at a time. So if I live sober one day at a time, then I have a fighting chance, or rather not a fighting chance, just an opportunity to make the best of what is, rather than worry about what I might have wanted. So I put something out on Facebook yesterday that I went to a meeting last night, and it reminded me what it was like at my first meeting, where I could hardly hold a cup of tea or coffee because I was shaking so badly, and I had no clue about life at all. I completely lost the plot. So from there to now, what's important? My needs are met, I have a roof over my head, family include me, friends include me, and I have a fellowship which supports me in my sobriety. So all to the good, and that fellowship is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And that meeting last night just endorsed what is life about. It's there to be lived in the moment. And I'm so pleased, because if I cover my needs, which is to be included, loved, and be able to love back, then the wants often float away. So I want to win the lottery, I want to find the thing I've lost, I want to do this, I want to do that. Mostly it all floats away because it's not important. What's important is being included and understanding how to be loved, love back, and do something useful. So this is part of my usefulness, I guess, just sharing a message of experience, strength and hope as it is occurring to me. And so I share about the AA fellowship and a little bit of literature, and one or two quotes which are inspiring me in my research. So, what is AA? The bedrock of my sobriety. Here is the AA preamble, or statement of intent, shared at every meeting of AA, and it reads like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And how we do that? Well, every single person who goes to AA is same-sized, unique, authentic path of recovery for each person, but not special and different. So we have this broad similarity of needing to be sober, and also a desire to stop drinking, and then stay stopped. And then we have a pattern of learning how to live again. And we have a toolkit which includes the 12 steps of action for an individual to change their attitude and behaviour to life. And those 12 steps are covered in this book here, the Daily Reflections, in a very loose way. There's the AA Big Book, which is it's a pleasure to read it, actually, because if you're an alcoholic you relate to the stories, because we all share experience, strength and hope of what it was like back then in the day when we were drinking, and what it's like to be in recovery. And it can be from one day to God knows how many days sober, but we're all in the same place, in the same spot when we go to a meeting. So the person who is one day sober, or just on the way to being sober, has a purpose to be there, as much as the person may have been there for 47 years in some cases that I know. So February, well, it's step 2, and the step 2 reads, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And in the old drinking days we were always taught, and I was taught, in the materialistic and career sense, aim high and get there. So try to be top dog, win at all costs, be competitive. And there's nothing wrong with that, but if it overrules everything else and becomes an obsession beyond anything else, then although we might actually achieve it, at what cost in terms of a balanced life? And the answer is no balance most often. So for me these days I look for balance in life. So what is this higher power which is important to me? Well, I can't define God because it's beyond definition. It, she, he, it, whatever. But I can say that what works for me as a broad understanding of living is that truth, the absolute universal truth, is God for me. God works through people, sharing experience, strength and hope. And God is love. So truth, listening to others, and love will do me fine as a higher power. So often I can't find the truth on my own. Often I don't know how to love unless I'm loved back. And often my own ideas on the world don't work, so I need input from other people. So being restored to sanity in step 2 is about letting the world in, finding the truth of now, and understanding a little bit about being loved. How about that? That wasn't so hard for me, but it did take me 1 or 2 years of trying to work out, whether I should be a believer in God. And the answer is, God is or isn't. I don't have a choice in the matter. That truth is beyond me most of the time. Anyway, quotes which I like today. It's about laughter, actually. I'm going to do the daily reflections first because I might just run out of time otherwise. So for the 20th of February, it says here, the gift of laughter. And that's what we get in sobriety as well. At this juncture, his AA sponsor usually laughs. Before my recovery from alcoholism began, laughter was one of the most painful sounds I knew. I never laughed, and I felt that anyone else's laughter was directed at me. I was always looking for who was laughing at me, or on my case. My self-pity and anger denied me the simplest of pleasures of lightness of heart. By the end of my drinking, not even alcohol could provoke a drunken giggle in me. When my AA sponsor began to laugh and point out my self-pity and ego-feeding deceptions, I was annoyed and hurt, but it taught me to lighten up and focus on my recovery. I soon learned to laugh at myself, and eventually I taught those I sponsor to laugh also. Every day I ask God to help me stop taking myself too seriously. That's me. And I'm so glad I've rid that out because I'm just about out of time. So we do get to laugh again, and that, it's laughter at the right things that really amuse us. And there is so much humour in the world if we just look at it in the right way, that it's not all about us, and there is a way to live soberly, but with laughter, or laughter, depending on how you like to pronounce it. So what helps me is acceptance of life on life's terms, and not taking myself too seriously. And that serenity prayer to God or good conscience, as is your choice. Your choice. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference is, for me, just for today. My substance, alcohol, my behaviour, trying to be perfect, never so. Working hard for 35 years, and never quite knowing whether I was in the right job or the wrong job, never even thought about it. Felt if I was pleasing other people I was probably doing okay. In the end though I realised that I was probably doing things because it looked good, felt the right thing to be doing, and might not have been the right thing for me, and that applied to my drinking, and I became drink dependent and alcoholic. So what does an alcoholic do? Either they keep on drinking or they stop. If we keep on drinking, the inevitable will happen, that we lose control and we die early, simply because there is no other path. So addiction is one of the hardest things to deal with. We don't overcome it and end it. We stay in recovery a day at a time. That's what I've learned. And what helps me most is the fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't speak for it, but I do speak for myself and what it does for me. Every meeting there is the preamble, and I'll share that now. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. The primary purpose, or our primary purpose, is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And that doesn't mean that it's any particular type of alcoholic who can then achieve sobriety. It's anyone and everyone who may have the malady and desire sobriety one day only. So it's a one-day program, only lasts 24 hours. And then we can be forgetting again. And as we forget what is good for us, we can go back to old ways to fix. And what I've learned over the last few years is that my best thinking and intellect keeps me drinking, and my best feelings and being a part of a fellowship keeps me sober one day. So my thinking got me into alcoholism because I felt I had the self-will to overcome it, and willpower failed me over and over again. But before that I had to find out that I was in denial or just ignorant of my illness, and that took an awful long time. And my father was an alcoholic, and we never really thought about him as being one. And it's only in hindsight that somebody drinking 2 bottles of spirits a day, possibly, for 45 years did have a problem with drink. Anyway, where am I today? How am I feeling? I'm feeling okay. I've been helping people. And I've also been to a good meeting of the fellowship last night. It's called the STEP meeting, and there are 12 steps of action in the action program for individuals within the fellowship. And it's how people choose to utilise these 12 steps of action in their living experience and their experience of life. They only work if we have experience of living. So the whole program is geared to being part of society, family, civilization, in whatever order is appropriate. And I use literature, like the daily reflections, to give me a bit of a sharper focus on a daily basis. And today it says, page 59, February the 20th, the gift of laughter. At this juncture, his AA sponsor usually laughs. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 26. And this is all about step 2, coming to believe a higher power can restore us to sanity. Now more on what a higher power might be in a moment. Before my recovery from alcoholism began, laughter was one of the most painful sounds I knew. I never laughed, and I felt that anyone else's laughter was directed at me. My self-pity and anger denied me the simplest pleasures of lightness of heart. By the end of my drinking, not even alcohol could provoke a drunken giggle in me. When my AA sponsor began to laugh and point out my self-pity and my ego-feeding deceptions, I was annoyed and hurt, but it taught me to lighten up and focus on my recovery. I soon learned to laugh at myself, and eventually I taught those I sponsor to laugh also. Every day I ask God to help me stop taking myself too seriously. And that is so true. We who have a malady and we're trying to keep in recovery, we always come sometimes from a place of feeling less than others, and that leads to paranoia, fear of not being good enough, and all of those horrible things that any normal human person can get on a daily basis when they feel they don't measure up to some sort of standard that is described out there in the media or whatever. And it's easy to fall into these traps, if you like, of spiralling downward in our thinking, so that we actually cannot make use of or utilise our best parts of the day. So if we're always looking over our shoulder to be frowned upon, we will always look back at our history. But if we actually stay in the present moment of now and say, how am I feeling today and why and what can I do, we have a better chance. So how am I feeling today? More level-headed and accepting my situation. I'm having to deal with recovery, not only from alcoholism, but the impact of living longer. And the impact of living longer means I now have type 1 diabetes out of the blue, and I wanted to blame myself for it, but I couldn't. And also properly diagnosed with clinical depression. So I have those two things going on as well as being in recovery. And the gift is recovery makes it possible to help myself and get the help and support I need to deal with the other two conditions. And I'm in regime change, which means that there is no medication I can use at the moment, because there was a contraindicated set of medications being used for a whole raft of things which are complications to do with the diabetes. So now I know I've had to stop it, or stop them, and life is rough, so my emotional stability is up and down, and it's not something I can control, so I'm powerless over it. And I'm learning on a daily basis that powerless means I best get support or I fall down and I have nothing to lean on. So just the gentle gift of being and understanding what my situation is today really does help me. And in As Bill Sees It, another one-pager per day, this one, co-founders. Let's get to the right page for today. Where are we? Yes, not allied with any sect. Here we go. And it's part of the understanding of what AA is. Whilst AA has restored thousands of poor Christians to their churches and has made believers out of atheists and agnostics, or people like me who just don't have a clue right now, just happy not to have a clue but make the day work, and has made believers, AAs out of the, start again. It has also made good AAs out of those belonging to the Buddhist, Islamic and Jewish faiths. For example, we question very much whether our Buddhist members in Japan would ever have joined this society had AA officially stamped itself a strictly Christian movement. You can easily convince yourself of this by imagining that AA started among the Buddhists and that they then told you you couldn't join them unless you became a Buddhist too. If you were a Christian alcoholic under these circumstances, you might well turn your face to the wall and die. And that's what happens so often. We get bamboozled by thinking we ought to be this, we ought to be that, when in fact the absolutely true nature of a higher power coming to restore us to sanity is whatever that higher power happens to be. And it's a personal belief and understanding, and it could be that the higher power is AA or society or God, the God of your understanding, not my understanding. And you know, the God of anybody's understanding, there are 6.5 billion people on the planet. That's the gift, and each understands God or not God as they choose to. It's personal choice. And for me, a higher power is to truth. So for me, as Gandhi said, God is truth, God is love, and God works through people. And that's a very practical, nuts and bolts approach for me. It may not suit anybody else in the world, but it's all I know, that I will get help and support. And the higher power is having the good conscience to say, I don't know the answers and I need help and support. So those things are paramount to me. And it's also paramount if I want to be restored to sanity on a daily basis, especially when I'm in an emotional wreck, if you like, where my moods go up and down because my endocrine system is compromised, and all the little pituitary, the thyroid, the hypothalamus, all of those glands in the head which make life work for people and make us make sense of who we are, all those are up and down as they can be with a chemical imbalance. So I'm learning gently that I need help and support, and I get the most help from those in the fellowship who keep me sane so that I can then, well, whatever sanity is, so I can keep on going and go through this regime change, which is very, very difficult and very, very painful, not only emotionally but physically too. So, as I say, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, simply one day today.